All right, good morning, everyone. Here we are at the Williston Conservation Commission, January 17th. It's not as dark out as it was last meeting. We're on the right side of the sun now. So today, let's go ahead and get started with public comment. Do we have any public comment for today?
No hands raised.
All right. Then the minutes from January 3rd. Any comments on the minutes for January 3rd? They look good to me. Not, if not, may I have a motion to approve as submitted? Anyone? Anyone here in the room want to make a motion?
I move to approve the minutes as drafted.
Thank you, Reed. May I have a second?
I'll second. I wasn't here, but
Oh,
I'll
that's
second.
right. Forgot, sorry. All right, any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes from January 3rd as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? And any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Okay,
And I'll abstain as well.
all right, great, thanks. Reed, I'm glad that you liked the minutes. Okay. Phew, all right, I hope that was the most difficult piece of business we have to do today. All right, on to DP 2414, pre-app from Chittenden Solid Waste District.
Okay, so I'll just do a report. There's a few people, I think, at least 3 of you are from CSWD, so I don't know if you just want to introduce yourselves. And maybe start with Greg and Tony and Josh.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Greg Dixon. I am the civil engineer on the project with Krebs and Lansing.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having us.
And I think
we have Tony Babangalo and Josh Estes also online from CSWD.
All right.
And Greg, just so you know, in the room is Laura and Eric, who are on the Conservation Commission. And we also have Reed Carr, not Reed Willis, is on the Conservation Commission, as is Gary.
I can see you guys have that owl thing.
Yeah, we do.
That thing's pretty good.
So, okay, so Simon, can you give us a quick overview of the project?
Yeah, sure. So this relates to some of CSWD's land up off Redmond Road, one of the parcels they own. So sort of the one in between the two entrances to Global Foundries.
Yep.
They actually own 2 parcels there, which are part of the site, the big vacant one with the Velco access road, and then the house that they own down there in the smaller parcel. So it's a proposal for construction of the new MRF, the Materials Recovery Centre, which has been relocated from Avenue C. They're proposing to demolish the road, create a new access road from Redmond Road, with a new scale and sort of storage area. The MRF itself will be about 72,000 square feet of footprint, and will include a large office, and then there'll be sort of parking and a truck maneuvering area. So we can have a look at the plan in a moment, or maybe I can bring it up now. So that's so over here is where the existing house is. So the road sort of comes in off Redmond and then winds through the site till you get to the scale, and then comes out to the large new MRF with the parking. There's various stormwater and septic systems around it. That's the existing access road to the Velco space behind them. And then there's a few wetlands dotted around the parcel as well.
Okay. And is the driver for this project to move from Avenue C because of all the seagulls issue, or is it more than that?
I think it's more just to upgrade, upgrade the facility to newer standards combined with sort of consolidating a lot of their procedures on Redmond Road.
Okay.
So we have the ERF now, which is a medium priority. There is a desired primitive trail, which I discovered on the map, leading from the back of Ledgewood to Redmond Road and then into the Global Foundries parcel. We do actually have an easement already across the Transco map, which I think runs along the transmission line corridor. So that's the first section. The parcel is within significant wildlife habitat area. Both there's a small amount of core habitat there and also a travel corridor. So the road obviously does cross the wildlife corridor and has some impacts there, which map closely to the sort of wooded areas. Greg helpfully gave us a sort of long one, some drawings showing it. So the green line is the core habitat. So sort of anything outside of those lines. So this area and this area and this area in here is core habitat, and then the purple line is the wildlife travel corridor. So you can see how it cuts across the site and goes into the Global Foundries parcel. And then it's a little difficult to see because the line's quite thin, but this map shows in blue the areas where it crosses the SWHA. So it crosses a small amount of core habitat down there near the house, which you can see is this sort of strip here. It also crosses the travel corridor here, this area outlined in blue, which is broadly speaking this area here. So a bit of course travel corridor and core habitat. And then lastly, again, a smaller area of core habitat and travel corridor over here where the road goes across again. We don't have any UREITs, UNCs, farmland. There is some scenic view shed in the parcel, but it's not affected by the development. It's way down in the southern part of the parcel. No flooding. And then there's 4 class wetlands on the subject parcel, which CSWD delineated in 2020. I think they've been out on site with Vermont A&R to fix them. There's 3 shown on the site plan, with the 4th, which is outside of the project area to the north. So I think the class 2 wetlands are this one here, this larger one here, and then this smaller one here. And then there's a couple of class 3, which I think is one which is the stormwater stuff is, and then the smaller one down here. So those are shown on the site plan, and they obviously need to be protected and outside of the buffer. We also have a stream which runs through the center of the parcel, I think is intermittent. I know the applicant's showing a 50-foot boundary protection buffer to that stream. Our bylaws do allow you to cross streams for road crossings, providing the sort of width and length is minimised. And I think Greg is talking to the Vermont Stream team about that at the moment. And then what follows is just the findings and recommendations.
Okay. Greg, did you have anything further to add on the project?
Not all that much. I think Simon did a good job of sort of analyzing it. I mean, obviously the project is looking to work with the Conservation Commission as well as all of the sort of Vermont entities at A&R. We're sort of in the process of that right now. I don't have a lot to report on conversations with them so far. Tina Heath has discussed the project and sort of preliminarily looked at it and looked at the reports from TRC. We are not actually disturbing any wetlands or their buffers, so it's sort of just a coordination on them verifying it, which verification may happen in the spring if it hasn't already happened to date with TRC. As Simon mentioned, we are disturbing the class 3 wetland down next to Redmond Road. That area will be used for stormwater treatment. We have some ideas for the wildlife corridor. We are crossing it with the roadway, which is pretty similar to sort of crossing Redmond Road, crossing that same corridor. We discussed this yesterday with the project team. We're hoping we can come up with some ideas with the Conservation Commission about possibly providing more plantings in area and generating another corridor where it made more sense with the topography on site, as well as the new project, i.e. kind of create a new forested edge right up to the limits of the driveway on either side and provide an area where the crossing would just be limited to the road and sort of the stormwater infrastructure on either side of the road to collect the stormwater. We have preliminarily looked at the disturbance to the soils on site. Most of the soils on site are statewide significance for prime agricultural soils. A lot of those statewides come with an asterisk of if they're constantly saturated, which I don't know if any of you have been to this parcel. Many of the soils on this site are. We also have to, as part of our Active 50 permit, we'll also be working with state soils and identifying sort of our impact to that prime agricultural soil. As I don't know if Simon mentioned it, but this project is getting an Active 50 permit. So we will have to go through all the process with A&R and DEC for evaluating all conservation on site. That includes pretty much all the things we discussed, soils, wetlands, streams, wildlife. So we're in the preliminary stages of those conversations. We hope to have sort of a submission to Active 50 sometime in February, but I've already started the conversations with those different entities because sometimes it takes a little bit longer to work with them. I'm happy to answer any questions and also kind of go through the recommendations. I didn't think any of the recommendations were that blindsided by the team, so we're happy to discuss those and provide any other information the Conservation Commission needs.
Great, thanks, Greg. Reed, go ahead.
Yeah, Simon, is it possible to pull up the SWHA map so we can see what's on the other side of Redmond Road for SWHA? Okay. So on the other side is just the corridor, really.
Yeah, I think that if we zoomed out a little further, there'd be a much larger, I think it's a forest block.
Yeah, from what I read of the core habitat, it was just the it's really limited to the wooded areas. It's forest
Yep.
and forest adjacent.
Yep.
And we are trying to limit the cutting on this project to the extent practical. I mean, I think you can see the project is sort of in the open fields right now.
I had a
Other-
question too, Eric.
Yep, go ahead, David.
My question was related to the Act 250 process. And maybe a question of what is our role in the context of that Act 250 process? Is this going to the DRB for review? And I'm sorry I missed the start of that presentation, but what is sort of being asked of the Conservation Commission here and today, if it's still going to go through that very complicated 250 process?
So the Act 250 process evaluates the project as a whole for the use on the parcel. Part of that process is evaluation by the town. So the town DRB, the Town Conservation Commission, you're required to get all town permits before you get your Act 250 permit. So I think as part of the Act 250 permit, town support by both the Conservation Commission and the DRB are sort of contingent on getting that Act 250 permit.
So
I think you meant to say that the Act 250 permit is contingent on getting the town permits.
Yeah, sorry if I said that opposite. That'll be one of the requirements before we are issued an Act 250 permit.
So just treat this like a regular discretionary permit pre-app, I think is sort of the way to go, but
Yep.
in the background, this is one of many other permits that this facility has to get.
And then we don't really have, so we will, as Simon just said, we will follow our typical town process for permitting it. But as, in my experience anyway, that's the extent of our involvement. We don't get involved at the Act 250 review level or anything like that.
Yeah, I brought up the Act 250 permit as more of a mention to the board that this is also being evaluated by other conservation entities in the state and federally.
Thank you. And how does this compare to the Redmond Road facility? For someone who's been to the Redmond Road facility, it's really a very busy space with a lot of very large trucks driving around. You know, is this going to be a smaller, less busy facility than that, or is it going to be bigger, larger, more activity than what that Avenue C facility is now?
So the Avenue C facility, I'd say is pretty consistent with what you would expect Avenue C. The only sort of change might be, I think you'll see a lot less drop off from just the average person. I think this area will be more drop off from trucks and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna offer too. It sounds like, David, if you've not been to Avenue C, that is where, in my experience, that's where a lot of the larger trucks go to drop off their loads. So I would see if it's the same traffic patterns or whatever, same type of traffic that's going to Avenue C now, I would think that's gonna increase the truck traffic on Redmond Road by quite a bit.
Yeah.
When this facility is in place.
Yeah, that's what I would anticipate as well. You know, it's a very impactful operation, I guess, is where my head is at.
And not just
It
Redmond
doesn't
Road,
exclude-
down Mountain View as well.
Right. So it doesn't exclude private people using it. I know I've used the one on Avenue C quite often, as you perhaps have, Eric, and it is, you got to work among these trucks that are large, and it's a little bit sketchy for those of us that aren't used to that, if
Yeah.
you're hauling a big trailer or something. So I think that, you know, in addition to big trucks, there'll be an increase in private vehicles as well on the road.
So this does differ from Avenue C, that it's not a drop off for like construction materials and stuff like that. I'm sure Josh, I think he's got his hand raised. He might be able to sort of shed a little bit more light, but this is for recycling organization. So it takes in a lot of the recycling for CSWD and then sorts it into its different recycling stuff, glass, plastics, all the different plastics, obviously. So this isn't an area where you would bring trash.
All right, I thought it was like a wholesale move from Avenue C over to Redmond Road. All right, I feel a little bit better then. Josh.
So
Josh,
does that?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead and finish your comment, Gary.
I was just gonna.
I was just gonna say.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I was just. It looks like Josh is raising his hand and is muted. He's from CSWD. He could further the conversation, but it's a materials processing plant. So I do think it will be mostly limited to entities who are bringing recyclable material to be processed. I do not think the average homeowner is going to drop stuff off here unless they have, because they would still go up the street where they would drop off the trash in the recycling centers that are at the end of Redmond Road.
Okay. All right, Josh, go ahead.
Just to cut
patience.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I wanted to clarify, Avenue B is where the trash transfer station is that's operated by Casella. That facility is staying. Our facility on Avenue C is our recycling facility only. We do not take residential loads. I would say 99% are commercial loads that get brought to that facility. Avenue B, the transfer station where they take municipal solid waste, is primarily where a homeowner can bring trash to that facility. Avenue C, where we do the recycling, is primarily commercial loads. We get the occasional residential load, but it's the vast majority is commercial loads of materials. So, and also just wanted to clarify that the facility is being replaced. It's not being added to. So the current recycling facility on Avenue C will be removed, taken out of service as soon as we get the new one on Redmond Road up and running. So in essence, the truck traffic that we were seeing on Avenue C will be redirected to this site on Redmond Road. So we'll see the reduction on industrial, and it'll be coming to Redmond. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. And we don't anticipate an immediate increase in truck traffic, but we are planning on this facility being significantly larger in footprint than the current facility, and there's no space to expand down on Avenue C, which is why we're physically moving the location. So planning for the future more than planning for an immediate change as far as truck traffic being brought to Redmond Road. So it'll be same size receiving material into the facility immediately, but planning on being able to take larger amounts of material in the future. So thanks for the opportunity to clarify.
Yes, thank you, Josh. I don't know about Gary, but I was definitely confusing it with the Avenue B Casella facility. Yeah, that helps a lot.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, Gary, did you have another comment you wanted to offer?
No, I think that clarifies it for me as well.
Okay. Do you, either Josh or Greg, do you know approximately what the truck traffic is like now going into the Avenue C facility?
I certainly would have the ability to get you numbers, but you know, we've had conversations about our permitted hours right now are I think they're 6 to 3:30 or something to that effect, and we don't have any plans to change that those permitted hours because we do have a solid waste facility certification, and it's outlined in that certification as well that goes through the solid waste division and A&R. So 6 to 3:30 are the permitted hours for trucks, and we certainly see it as you might expect, truck traffic sort of front loaded, but also, you know, we see a certain amount of traffic going to our compost facility on Redmond Road anyway, sort of in that early morning hours anyway. So I could get traffic numbers to you, but those are sort of our permitted hours.
Right. Yeah, I think, I don't know how much it needs to affect our decision today, but I think that would be a good question to be able to answer. How many trucks per day, for example, are going through Avenue C at least now? But, okay, David?
Yeah, thanks. On that truck question, the definitely, that's where my head is, at least in terms of thinking about those trucks. Redmond Road is not in good shape. This would be a big expansion of that potentially, and pretty heavy materials. Are there other improvements that this upgrade to the use of the, I mean, I imagine this is consistent with the zoning and permitting, and you know, with the town voting on this matter, but what type of other improvements are going to be triggered by this facility, I guess, by way of facilitating all of these large trucks coming into the facility? And then I have a follow-up question related to trucks.
So Redmond Road and Mountain View Drive are both town owned and operated roadways. So they won't really be evaluated by V-Trans as much until you get out to like Route 2A. I do think that traffic is already something Simon flagged for us to take a look at. Traffic will be discussed when we are doing the Act 250 permit with V-Trans, but also traffic will be discussed in the discretionary permit. So I think sort of any impacts to either the roadway or traffic would probably be evaluated by the discretionary permit with the DRB. And we are looking into those calculations right now.
Is there any consideration though for, you know, I know it's a busy road, but this is potentially going to make it far more busy, and especially during the morning hours. And from the Conservation Commission point of view, and this being in very close proximity to wildlife areas and where wildlife may cross the road, is there any contemplation of either the development of a wildlife crossing area, or in any way sort of facilitating non-lethal interactions with the increase in truck traffic?
There's no plan to widen the road or anything like that, so I don't think the project would increase sort of the distance wildlife has to cross Redmond Road. There is a good posted speed limit on Redmond Road. I think it's 30 miles per hour, so that would sort of limit fast moving trucks. We haven't looked into an environmental crossing, but it's something we could look into.
Okay, and then I have another question about the facility itself. I've actually in a former life had some responsibilities around recycling procurement, so I've been to a handful of these sites. Could you just identify or explain the process for the waste, or I guess the recycling, recovery and sorting in the facility? Is it going to be a conveyor, magnetic, robotic arm situation? Is it going to be a human resource source facility? Could you just sort of talk to us about what's actually going to be in there?
Yeah, I will try to, the system itself is very intricate, for sure. If you take a look at the size of the building, I would say probably 2/3 of the back side of the building, the larger part of the building, on the pole yard side is a giant machine. And materials come in, they come into the front of the building or the scale side of the building, and they're dropped off there. They're put on conveyor belts and they run through this large machine. That machine sort of processes it, using all sorts of conveyor belts and other sort of mechanical processes to take all of those recycling materials and sort them. After that, it kind of also, the building also provides an area to stage those materials after they've been processed. So you kind of come into if you're looking at the plan, and maybe it's easier, Simon, if you bring it up, I can kind of explain it.
Is this going to take much longer, Greg? We sort of need to get on with sorry, I don't mean that to sound rude, but we just need to get on with the recommendations at some point.
So we do need to take a look at the findings and recommendations.
Yeah, I'll do this really quick. So a truck would drive in, go over the scale, come into sort of the west side of the building on the scale side where it says proposed building. That's where materials will be dropped off. From there, it conveys into sort of the back portion of the building along the Velco Road side, where it's processed through that area, and then materials are kind of kept on the east front side closest to the scale, and that's where they're shipped out. But in the building is a massive sort of mechanical thing that sort of does all the processing. There are people that aid that process and aid that machine, but the machine does the majority of the work.
Thanks. And I imagine you'll have advanced air filtration for all of that, for the, I guess, the inside of that facility.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff will be, I believe, is sort of part of the machine and allowing people to work around it.
All right, thanks.
All right, we're gonna be a few minutes behind, so apologies to the Winooski Valley Park District folks. We do need to look at the findings and recommendations. Gary, is your question apply to the findings and recommendations that for Simon had on the screen?
No, I don't. I'm fine now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So findings, can you scroll up to findings? Thank you. So projects in the IZDE, it's designated as a medium priority for conservation, contains a desired trail. It's within SWHA, with core habitat and wildlife travel corridor. It's in secondary middle ground and contains class 2 wetlands and unnamed stream. Two more. The proposed project is a high-risk development for watershed health, as it was disturbed greater than 2 acres, and proposed project is not anticipated to impact on uncommon rare threatened endangered species. All right, so Simon ran through those earlier. So recommendations. And does anybody have any questions or concerns with recommendation 1? Habitat disturbance should be prepared. And this will follow our new-ish procedure where the town will secure the wildlife biologist, right?
Yeah. Do we want to, Greg mentioned that the guys, it sounds like they were talking about this, about the wildlife crossing, which is down here in this blue area. You're saying they're talking about, planting this up to create more like refuges for the
facility.
Yeah, before the wildlife dashes across the road, presumably when the facility's closed.
So I was looking at maybe shifting it to either sort of more heavily putting vegetation on either side of the stream crossing, and or shifting it down in between kind of where you see the laydown area and the stormwater pond, just because that I feel like that made more sense less topography and stuff like that, and providing sort of vegetation right up to the limits of the shortest crossing of the road. And sort of
So
working.
Greg makes a good point there, which is with this unnamed stream, we're going to have 50-foot buffers that basically run between two wetlands. And I think when we met with Jens a few months ago, he told us how much wildlife he loves using riparian areas to travel.
They naturally want to
Yes.
follow the stream, and
Yeah.
they want forest cover on either side of wherever they're crossing. So anything that can be done to expand forest cover, to make it wider and as closely as possible to follow the stream, will improve the usage.
Yeah, so I guess to that point, I guess that's what I would be looking for is maybe widening that 50-foot buffer on either side there to something larger, closer to 100 feet maybe, at that stream crossing. I guess given that information, maybe I'd see that almost as more important than the other area that's highlighted in blue right now.
So
Yeah.
100 feet on either side would be a little difficult with.
Right, yeah, I understand that with the facility on the, what was that, the east side?
Yeah, and truck turning and stuff. We have slimmed up the building. So I do believe I could probably move that side another 15 to 20 feet. And obviously we can look at the southern side as well and try to maybe shift that scale a little bit to limit that. So maybe I could get somewhere between 65 and 75 feet on either side of that stream. And
I mean, is it worth looking at this 100 feet? It's 100-foot wide, which is wider than the existing one here. And then maybe we can look at maybe strengthening along the road, just so they don't get there and then, but they need to be able to get back to this point to cross over into Global Foundries.
Or crossover Redmond Road?
Yeah,
Yeah, the plantings are the most important thing, I think, just so they have some cover.
yeah, we can look into plantings. We can also add to that with sort of passive restoration. Right now that area is loosely hayed or mowed or stuff like that. It's managed. We can unmanage it and allow it to sort of fill in with basically plants that blow in.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
yeah, Eric, that sounds good to me. What I would be looking for at the discretionary, this is pre-app, right? So at the discretionary permit step, what I would be looking at is just what adaptations Greg, the team feels like can be made to widen near that stream crossing there, and then also to connect it to the west as it crosses Redmond Road, where the purple travel corridor was outlined. Just making that connection, you know, whether there's two crossings there or whether there's one larger crossing that connects to the purple strip crossing Redmond Road, just seeing what adaptations are possible, and adjusting the location of the scale, widening the buffer, accounting for how they'll get over to the purple crossing across Redmond Road. Those things would all be improvements. And anything that can be returned from haying to forest cover, that's been something that's been a priority in this area, because we've actually had some parcels that have been kept open that were not supposed to be kept open in this, as you said, in saturated soils in this area.
I think in addition to that, Reed, the state now has new regulations on bridges and how the topography changes around them to allow for wildlife enhancement. That might be a good opportunity to help as well.
Yeah, I was, go ahead.
As I mentioned before, we're just in the preliminary stages of talking with streams, but I suspect this will require an open bottom sort of culvert that could also be used for sort of the smaller critters and amphibians, stuff like that.
I'm looking at the current map, and you have a small like forested path. That's the sort of first wildlife corridor, but then the stream right now looks to be just like an open stream. And I think from, what we're talking about here is, if you zoom out, there really is like a pretty large area of habitat, all the way from Mountain View Road, through it's just a pretty large habitat. And so this would be impactful for that, in that sort of lengthwise along Redmond Road. And so I'm kind of seeing both of that current forest pathway as well as that stream development as being the most likely areas. And so I'm just kind of echoing everything that the commission's already saying, but I do think that plantings along that stream to serve as that multiple egress really for wildlife to move from one side of Redmond Road to the next would be important. And so that would be right now that stream is not planted and it's just open. So this would be sort of an enhancement of that stream. And I definitely would encourage a large pathway underneath that road, because it looks like a pretty small stream, and just putting a small culvert underneath it, I think would not sort of match to the scale of the habitat that surrounds the back of this facility.
Yep. So let's see. I guess Greg and CSWD can take that under advisement. I guess I'd like to see what the wildlife biologist comes back with from their assessment as well. But I agree. I think that traditional U-shaped crossing would be a better approach here than just a small culvert. But I guess I'd like to see what the wildlife biologist report comes back with, and we can reevaluate that at the discretionary permit stage.
Can I just have one more comment, Eric?
Yep.
I was just thinking, when I read this, I see where it recommends mitigation. I'm just wondering if, like David was kind of referring to, if they could, in addition to providing good movement under that small stream, I assume there's another culvert under Redmond Road. I wonder if that could be enhanced as part of this mitigation, and therefore increasing the wildlife movement by Redmond Road as well.
Yeah, that's a town-owned road, and I think outside of the scope of this project.
Yeah, it would be a decision for DPW with their standards.
Well, it's one that we can take up with Public Works, but it's outside of this conversation, at least the approval for this project anyway.
Eric, I don't see any of the recommendations talking about enhancement of the buffer, if I'm not mistaken. It talks about reducing encroachment.
I think enhancement was something that we brought up.
Yeah.
So.
Well, so what I'm saying is, I think we should have something in here that says we recommend enhancement of the stream buffers beyond 50 foot where feasible.
Yeah, I guess I would suggest in recommendation 1, the last sentence, the habitat disturbance assessment should recommend mitigation measures. I guess I would suggest making that a new standalone bullet, and rather than the HDA recommending it, because that's done by somebody else external, maybe say something like the Conservation Commission recommends enhancement measures to address to mitigate impacts on the wildlife corridor that align with the findings in the habitat disturbance assessment.
I like that, Eric. Thank you.
Do you want to be specific to the riparian zone?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So on the wildlife corridor along the riparian.
Along the unnamed stream, yeah. You have something, Laura?
No, I just thought it might be confusing to call it wildlife corridor. Because that purple is what we're calling wildlife corridor.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say along the wildlife corridor and the unnamed stream, the combination, it's. Right, the unnamed stream might be the better crossing point for the access road, but the wildlife corridor doesn't quite align, so figuring out how to enhance one, the other, or both so that it becomes a functional crossing point for both the access road and Redmond Road.
Okay, so maybe just replace for the impacts on the between stream and wildlife corridor, just replace that with and. Improvements, so it's improvements to the unnamed stream and wildlife corridor that align with findings of the HDA.
That looks good to me.
Yes, I saw you nodding, Greg, so it seemed like you understood what that meant. Yep. I want to make sure it makes sense to you as well as to the DRB when they look at it.
Yeah, and I can help explain that to the DRB.
All right, so now bullet 3, site plan submitted with the discretionary permit shall show all wetland streams and buffers. That's pretty standard. That'll be prepared by wetland scientist. That is also someone that the town secures. Or no, the CSWD will do that, or the state.
They've already done it.
They've already done it, great.
They did this like
Tina.
4 years ago.
They mentioned Tina, that's
Yeah.
right, sorry. All right, for the proposed development must not encroach in watershed protection buffers, that'll be outlined. And then 5, watershed protection buffers will be clearly demarcated. And then 6, applicant will submit a professionally prepared runoff erosion control plan. Questions on any of those before we move on to trail easement? All right, so then number 6, trail easement. Do we want, would we like a trail easement through this parcel? How much of the parcel is going to be actually impacted by the project?
Preliminarily, right now, about 9.5 limit disturbance.
35 acres.
And right now, that trail, that primitive trail, we're kind of nowhere close to that with our plan development. So that will remain.
Okay. So it seems reasonable to have a request for a trail easement.
Yes, I agree.
I agree.
The dotted red, Simon, indicates that we do have those easements to the east there, correct?
The dotted, so the map was prepared in 2016, so at that point in time, we had those trail easements. So after that, when the official map was adopted in 2022, we had obviously since acquired a further easement across the Velco parcel.
Okay, yep. Yeah, so I would like to just, I'm not sure how it will end up aligning with the access road and stuff like that, but yeah, trail easement across there.
Where it would be well to the south of that. This is like an undeveloped, undisturbed area as part of this.
Oh, okay. All right.
So there is already the trail, as Simon mentioned down there, and so I do want to bring that up. I haven't talked to CSWD about the easement or if it's not possible or is possible, but there is the trail that already kind of, I feel like adding this trail would just, it's sort of already there. So I didn't know what the Conservation Commission thought of that. I mean, currently they just go down to Velco right away.
There's a trail that already exists that's unofficial and we could just like sanction it as part of this. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I've heard that people do use that Velco transmission line a lot, like informally. Even just going across, the Global Foundries guys say people go across their parcel all the time, so trail easement or no trail easement, I think people are using it.
Does Velco grant trail easements formally under their power lines?
Well, we have an easement there.
Okay,
And
Right.
there's one at Catamount for sure. People are.
Yeah.
okay.
The thing I was gonna add that like maybe I don't know if we want to reflect this in the minutes, but that like when a few years ago, many years ago now, when my students did like a look at where all of the trails were in town, this part of town was like underrepresented in terms of like access to natural spaces. So I think just like the more that we can do to have opportunities in this part of town is good.
Yep, I agree. All right, so for today's purposes, we just need to change that, remove the is not, I think, to a trails easement is required with discretionary permit application. Does anybody disagree with that?
David had his hand up. I don't know if you still had a
Oh,
comment, David.
sorry. Nope. That's an old one.
All
Then
right,
no, Eric, I'm
anything-
good.
Okay, thanks. Anything else on the findings and recommendations? All right, then may I have a motion to approve?
I'll move approval of the recommendations as drafted.
Second.
Thank you, Reed. I got a second from Kim. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right, there we go. Thank you, Greg and Chittenden Solid Waste District for your time this morning. Appreciate it. We'll look forward to taking a look at this at the discretionary permit stage.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so Winooski Valley Park District, did he leave,
It looks like Nick's left
Nick
already.
left already? All right. So we've got Lauren here. So, Lauren, I don't know if you want to cover what Nick was going to cover, or if, you'd be more comfortable if we rescheduled this for another day.
I think it'd probably be best to reschedule for another day. Him and I'm not quite as up to date as he is on on things. I've just, I've been reading some of the emails, but we haven't, he's was out with COVID the other week, so we haven't really had a chance to check in and like update on things.
Yep, okay, that's fine. We can find another time. Sorry that last agenda item took a bit longer than we had anticipated.
No problem.
Okay, well, Simon, we can work with you and Nick to find another meeting date that works for all of us.
Great, sounds good.
All right, thanks. Sorry about
Thanks.
that.
No problem. Good to see everyone.
Okay, good to see you,
Thanks.
Lauren.
Bye.
All right, so that gets us to town plan chapter 13 review. So we started this last time with a couple of us. We've got a few more folks on the call today. You're pulling it up, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's the last thing we need to do on this.
I submitted mine last night. I'm sorry for the late submission.
Okay.
I don't think there was anything earth shattering in there.
So
Come
I
on,
think
don't sell
last-
yourself short.
last time we talked about conservation areas and view sheds. I think just to summarize, obviously fresh in people's mind, we talked about working to conserve more land, spend less time asking for money and more time actually doing the work. And then on view sheds, I think everyone was generally, I think they were a good thing, but we need to look at a more refined way of dealing with them. Figure out what the important view sheds are, and then also figure out better regulations to protect them. So maybe if we just go straight into working landscapes and then we can circle back if needed.
Sounds good.
So let me just bring that up.
And this is an area where, Simon, where I think I feel like we don't have as much input from the public. We get a lot of comments related to view sheds. We get a lot of comments related to habitat and trails and all sorts of other stuff that we regulate.
Yeah.
But when it comes to working landscapes, we don't often have conversations with people in the ARZD, homeowners, landowners in the ARZD about their situation, how they can keep their land working. I just feel like it's a little bit, we know it's important and we know there are challenges, but we're not having a lot of interactions on this topic. So is there do you feel like we got good comments from ARZD landowners during the Williston 2050 process that covers like the nuance of ideas of what would help or what the main pain points are for them, or do you also feel like we have some
In
blind spots
short,
here?
In short, I don't think we did, to be honest
Yeah,
with
that's what I
you.
was worried about.
I think we've got general comments about conserving land, but I do think you're right. It's like quite a difficult thing to wrap your head around.
Well, and I feel like there's disengagement in large part, there's disengagement from landowners in the rural areas. I see Kim has her hand up, but I just wanted to bring that up. I feel like what I would really like to do is do more public outreach around 13.3 to find out what should we be doing? What could the town explore in the next 8 years to try to improve the situation beyond just saying we need to help?
And I think just to piggyback off of that and reiterate a conversation that I think we had previously around the conversation connected to agritourism, that within that group that Reed is referring to, there's like the folks whose land is working land, and then there's folks who live in between, right? Like they live in the ARZD, but they're not running a farm or something. And that's a really different demographic. And so I think it even needs to be like a smaller granularity than what Rita's suggesting. And I wonder if it could be like even just like focus groups or something, because I don't think people are going to fill out a survey. And I
Yes,
wonder
you
too
have to
if
go,
like,
you have to go to these people and talk to them like
yeah,
the students did for the 3 interviews in 2022. Those interviews were really insightful, but that was only 3, and it was some of two larger type farm operations and one
right.
woodlot operation that it doesn't cover, like you're saying, the people in between.
Was that were those Walt Pullman students?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't have any classes this semester and I don't have graduate students yet. So I feel like I can't be like, well, I'll help with this, but I could ask a colleague. And I keep thinking about Lisa Chase, who's really who's a UVM extension, and she's really interested in agritourism.
Yeah.
And it seems like I wonder if she has a grad student that's like doing something related to this anyway and could like add a research site. But I'm gonna go into Aiken later, so if I see Walt, I'll ask him. But that's mostly just like, yes, Reed, I agree. And also I think it's like different groups within that population.
And I think we have enough, we can get back to what the comments are here. I think we have enough to know that we need to say some things in this section, but between now and when the planning commission is assembling their drafts later this year, I think we could really benefit from some more public outreach, proactive public outreach to folks in the ARZD.
That sounds good to me. Looking at 13.3.1, support and encourage enrollment in the current use program, I think that would be maybe connected into an outreach effort as well. Just to make sure that there are as many lands enrolled in current use as we can get, because that will help also with the conservation effort. And the current use program itself is a state program. We don't have any say in how the program is run. Right.
But it was
we
expanded to include, right, carbon.
Tree,
Yeah,
forest.
also forests. The guy in charge of it didn't seem very interested in engaging with me about it during this process, but.
Really? Who's that?
I can't remember. I think he's more focused on like landowners, which is fair enough. And
Okay.
foresters.
They also, I mean, every county forester that I know, everybody that I know that's working on current use is like, I have enough paperwork. We're not like at a loss of people enrolling in the program. Which
It's not a well-kept secret or something.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Do we have a way of finding out what parcels in town are enrolled in current use?
I'm pretty sure the lister would, the assessor would know because it affects their taxes.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
I believe the management plans are also publicly available.
Because that might be just, that alone might be an interesting piece of information to look at, not necessarily.
Yes,
Yeah.
like a student project to say, create a map layer showing all lands that are currently enrolled and assess what areas are, might be ripe for outreach.
Yep. Yeah, we don't need to waste our outreach effort on people who already have their lands enrolled in current use, for example.
So I think that'd be great because these people don't generally tend to come out for these things. It would be good to do more education more broadly, just so people understand that these landscapes that they value are not generally natural. The cycle farm is not a natural landscape. And also, like some of the comments I did get, not particularly like, how do you stop them logging at Cyclebrook? Well, I don't want to. And people flying drones on Glenn Card's land when he's trying to farm it for his cows. It'd be good to have some broader education because otherwise we run up against local opposition when we're trying to do things.
Do we know if does the state have any outreach materials that we could use as a starting point?
For the current use?
Yeah.
I would assume so, yeah.
I mean, that's definitely the county foresters, it's part of their job description is to do outreach on that program specifically. So I'm sure that Ethan has a ton of stuff, ton of resources.
He probably has it on auto reply. If you ask
Yeah.
him for materials, he probably could just hit send.
I'll say that one thing that I know has consumed like at least a portion of his time about that new piece to incorporate carbon is that the way that it kind of like got marketed, or marketed is the wrong word, but the way that the story went out led some folks to believe that it meant you could enroll in current use and like do nothing to your forest. And that was really appealing to a set of landowners because there's a group of people who doesn't want to enroll in current use because it means that you have to actively manage. And the new legislation does not mean you don't actively manage. Like it means you actively manage, and managing for carbon is an option under it, but it still means that if you have a forest with an understory of invasive species, you have to harvest those. And if you have a forest with a bunch of unhealthy pine that's like riddled with blah, 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 you would do stand improvement. And so there was like at least like a little bit where people were like wanting to enroll under the new rule and then grouchy because it still meant you would have to cut trees. So my guess is that there's like he even has like some refined information given that experience, but it's probably just good for us to know that like it always means active management.
Yeah, I think there's only a certain portion of your land that you can put into that carbon sequestration piece as well, if I remember correctly. Do you know that, Kim?
You're right, and I don't know what it is. I just know that like that there's people who got really excited because they thought they could basically just like do nothing and get
Right.
like not have to cut
Free
any
money.
trees.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they still have to have a forestry plan and detail hired foresters and all that stuff too.
So is it worth, I mean, I'm trying to evaluate, is it worth asking Ethan to come in and chat with us about the program and how we might push it more and find out? And maybe first we find out what parcels in town are already enrolled in current use, so that we have a better idea of how many parcels would be,
Well, I think there's,
Okay.
I think there's, I guess if you're already in current use, you probably know about this. This is coming up, but.
if
You
you're,
can
if
go-
you're in current use, yes.
Yeah, but you could go from regular forestry to old growth forestry. I mean, maybe like someone like Dan Boomhouse will probably be interested in that.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
change how you're meeting the requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, so I guess back to my original thought, would it be worth just asking Ethan to come in at some point to chat more about the program with us?
Let me also, I'll ask the assessor, because if they can give me like parcel data that's, these 30 parcels are in current use, that's actually even my rudimentary GIS skills, I think I can map that.
Sure,
Um,
yeah. Because I mean, Ethan's more on the solution side, and I think my point is I don't think we understand the problem yet. And so we need to do more work to understand the problem here. Who's already enrolled, who's not enrolled, and then
Well, we can
what do
overlay
they
it with-
know
Yeah.
before we start trying to hit it with a hammer?
And
Yep.
maybe like parcels that would even be eligible. Like I bet that the assessor's data could. Right, like they have to be over a certain acreage. Gary, is it 25 plus 1? I can never remember.
Yes, it's 25. I don't know about the +1, but I know.
And then like
25,
1
yeah.
acre for your building envelope or
Oh,
something.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Excludes building envelope.
Yeah.
And then
I'm
the
sorry.
next logical step is just, sorry, otherwise we're just gonna keep talking and stopping. Would be
Yeah.
to like overlay it with, the work Jens did on those
Mhm.
tier 1 habitat blocks.
Exactly. Yep. Perfect.
Eric, I do agree with you. I think it'd be great for us to learn more about it before we start promoting it and it would be nice to be knowledgeable about it before we encourage it.
Yeah, okay, well, let's see what we can find out from the town assessor's office, and then, once we have that information, then we could take a look at it and maybe then bring Ethan in. I'd also be curious just to hear what the unenrollment rate is, like how often do people back out of the current use program too? That's something we need to be concerned about.
It's very costly to back out of it. There's
Oh, is
a
it?
huge economic disincentive in terms of taxes. I don't know the answer to your question, but my guess is that like backing out would be low. And I think I feel like at some point I saw some statistic that was like a quarter of all of Vermont's forest land or land mass is enrolled in current use. It's like it is an enormous amount of.
Yeah, I think the penalties include like paying back taxes that you saved over a certain past period of
it's
time
really
and that
costly.
kind of thing. Yeah. But it happens. I don't know how
Yeah,
often.
I guess I was thinking like, so people enroll in current use, but it's not for the rest of their life, right? Isn't there some time frame that they can then make a decision at some point to re-enroll?
I know there's some kind of 5-year or 10-year, you have to.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking is when do people, or how often do people decide to not re-enroll? If that's not, assuming that's an option. Anyway, okay. All right, so we'll see what we can find out from the town assessor's office and then take a look at that and then maybe bring Ethan in to talk about options for promoting the program. All right, what else in 13.3? Anything else in there?
Maybe when people thought it was a bit odd having community gardens in this particular chapter.
Is there a better location for it?
Well, to me, that like community gardens are, if you live in like a condo development where you don't have your own backyard,
Right,
they seem more like a neighborhood park type. I mean, they're generally pretty good, particularly if we're going to do more apartments.
Mhm.
And to have them. It's not really a working. I don't drive
Right.
past
Yeah,
community gardens, so I'm glad to see that landscape still working.
yeah. So not so much that community gardens needs to be
Yeah,
eliminated, just maybe relocated in the plan.
yeah.
Agreed.
I guess chapter 13 as a whole, is chapter 13 even the right spot for it? I mean, I'd see it as cultural resources maybe, but
I mean, this is an interesting suggestion, Simon. I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, we see things like, you know, a community building or like a parking lot next to a basketball court or something like that. I think we saw one of those in the Glazer plan. Are you suggesting that we could include in that something like space for a community garden and allowing that to fall within like the open space criteria of the development?
Well, the way it works at the moment is people have to provide neighborhood parks for residential development above 15 houses. The neighborhood parks criteria are not particularly well defined, like hence, remember we had that discussion and Reed says he doesn't love neighborhood parks, but Kim does love them. So it sort of depends on where you live.
It's not that I don't like them, it's that I don't like the way they've been implemented.
And
I
I
think,
like the way mine was implemented.
and
Yeah.
Kim's is unique. Most
Yeah.
community parks are not like Kim's.
But I think
Yeah.
we agreed that Reed would like mine if his family lived in this neighborhood, right?
Exactly.
We
Yep.
weren't like fighting. Let the
Yeah.
record show that Reed and Kim were not fighting.
The
No,
gazebo versus swing set discussion is
Right.
all coming back to me.
yeah, like a
Yeah.
gazebo behind people's houses and nobody wants to go be in a fishbowl and there's nothing there except the gazebo
right.
to go sit in. It's just not functional. So the functionality of the parks that are getting created during developments hasn't been great recently. And so I was really glad with the growth center planning that we've got parks planned in on the official map. This is where they'll be, this is how large they'll be, so on, so that we don't get the shrinking park syndrome that we've been getting,
Mhm.
where
I
when
guess
push
in
comes
the
to shove.
The situation of a gazebo, though, Reed, is that instead of a gazebo, it can be like a gazebo plus like a garden space.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yep.
required space for those homes to then use as their garden area.
so.
Yeah, gardens could be
okay, so
encouraged.
with that in mind, would it make more sense to have? Where'd it go? 13.3.5, promote community gardens and designated open space. Would it make more sense for that to be located in the land use chapter? Like,
I think the
Or-
residential design
or
we just
community
take and
design,
continue
yeah.
to go into open space. We need to refine park standards, I think, because at the moment it's a bit like we suggest that you do it,
Mhm.
and people take it on board because they know they have to do a neighborhood park. And I think maybe these things are not that prohibitively expensive on a development.
A community garden? I
Yeah,
don't think not.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it'd be
yeah.
almost nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe, all right, so chapter 4, community design,
Yeah,
somewhere around 4.5 neighborhood parks, somewhere in there. Okay.
Unless you get those fancy metal joints for the
For the raised beds.
raised garden beds at Gardener's
Yeah.
Supply, because then
Right.
your price
That
goes
is
up
expensive.
astronomically. I do think though that would be a good use of the gazebos, because working in the garden, you know, you want to cool off in the shade.
Yeah, you have a place to put your lunchbox and your water bottle to break while
Yeah.
you're working on stuff.
There you go.
All right, so I guess that's one recommendation coming out of this for this chapter. Anything else in here? All right, then
Oh.
moving on to cultural, did you have something?
Nope. I liked everybody's comments.
Okay, so cultural resources. Um. All right, so a couple comments there. Trying to remember which one was mine.
I was thinking, I didn't have, I don't even know if I had any opinion on this, because I was thinking the only thing I can think of as a cultural resource for the town is that section of the Dorothy Aileen Memorial Library, which
Yeah.
has all of those historical maps. So if there is any marked or demarcated historical boundaries, I mean, maybe the the routed sign at the top of the hill at Catamount is the closest thing. I'm not really even sure what to make of that one. So I would say any improvement over this would be better than what we've got.
Yeah, what about stone walls and old mill sites and things? Those are cultural resources, right? Or,
Mhm.
Or in cellar walls, like are there places where
yes,
there's like old
Obviously, Minnehaha, there's
cellar
a
holes?
there's a
so
old
many.
foundation, stone foundation from a cellar there.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so all of those, certainly are cultural resources. There's like historic buildings, historic places that could be considered. I guess, my thought is this topic within the purview of the Conservation Commission? I mean, we have the Historic Preservation Committee or
Yeah.
whatever they're called.
Oh, yeah,
That
yeah.
also, I would hope, would be looking at this.
Yeah.
So I
However,
think-
many like stone walls and old cellar holes are like now in forests. Like I just was talking to somebody about like, I was talking to the woman who manages the UVM natural areas about that like cistern, or I don't even know what it is, that's like on the edge of Talcott and Catamount. She calls it the Fountain of Youth. It's like like we don't know the history of it. It's just like some open water something.
Mythical.
Like is a child gonna fall in there? We don't know. Like, do you know like forests take like so like how many things like that are like actually in forest land and would be like there'd be like overlap between us and historic preservation? I don't know.
Are those areas currently, protected, Kim? Do you know? Like if you went into log, could you like move, cover up a cellar hole and log around it or whatever?
That's a good question. Ashley Community Forest, which spans Stafford and Sharon, I think. I always get confused. I think it's the only town forest in Vermont that's owned by two towns, which it confuses me. They do have a bunch of like preservation measures around stone walls and cellar holes that they like know the history of and when they were moved and what the houses were and like the prominent families, and there's like all of this, like it was documented before the land was acquired by the town and then by the towns, and then it got integrated into the management plan. I don't know that that's like it's uncommon in my, like, I don't know. I would say it's uncommon. I don't know if I'm saying that super accurately. But then I think there's just a lot of things where we're like, we don't know what this is. It probably is here from when Vermont was deforested for sheep farming. It seems like that, right? Or the like Fountain of Youth thing. Like, what even is that? Maybe Jim and Lucy put it there. I have no idea.
Hey guys, I'm sorry, I have to jump early today. I've got a contractor here to fix something that they messed up when they installed it. So I gotta run.
Okay, all right, good luck with that, David.
Yeah, thanks.
Have fun. Have fun.
Bye.
Okay, so is there anything in particular that the Conservation Commission feels is important to focus on? I'm hearing stone walls and cisterns.
For me, it's important that 13.4
that I
exists.
know of. So
All
For
right,
me, it's
so,
important that 13.4 exists, Eric, but
Yep.
who is I guess, clarifying what resources fall under it and which town group is looking out for it, needs to be done.
So I guess I'd just like to confirm that the Historic and Architectural Advisory Committee is looking at this part of this chapter.
I think that they started theirs later than us, so they will be looking at it at some point.
But they will be looking at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'd
Great.
be nice to know if there's any current regulations which protect these areas as well.
That's true.
Could we, Simon, find out when they're gonna be going over this and maybe have one of us join their meeting to
Yeah.
figure out together? Cause I have a feeling they're not really paying attention to this and we're not really paying attention to this.
Mhm.
Right, I mean, I don't think their focus is like the village, so I don't think they're
Right.
looking archaeological.
Like the
stuff.
schoolhouse and that kind of stuff.
No one's looking archaeology.
Right,
Mhm.
so somebody needs to, and I think that's a conversation that should start. Seems like a good place to start would be to, when they're gonna review this chapter as a group. And Kim sounds like she's got some interest in this topic. I know Laura does, but
Yeah.
maybe one of us
I
will be
mean,
like,
I think like it's part of the natural history of our town forests or our forests more broadly, right? Like, Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I was just reading up on the charge for the Historic Committee. Yeah.
does it mention
okay.
archaeology or prehistory?
No, it seems like they pretty much have their parallel role to us in, reviewing, development, proposals. And then some advice on, or guidance on preservation to owners of historic structures and a few other things. So it's kind of hard to say how much they'll look at it. Emily staffs this one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's really looking at stone walls or anything like that, or the cellar
Right.
holes or archaeology.
All right, let me get back to that one.
I think my 8th grade project at WCS was mapping the rock walls in near the town hall field.
Well,
So
that's pretty good. I mean, the
does it-
walls probably haven't moved, so it's probably still
And I
accurate.
used, I took GPS points and did the mapping and everything.
It sounds like we have in fact achieved that,
Yeah.
13.4.3.
We, yeah, in 2002.
Perfect. Done and dusted.
Sounds like an expert.
I guess my point is if a middle schooler can do it, we can get this done.
All right, consider the appointment of an archaeologist to the Conservation Commission, boy. I don't remember that from the previous town plan.
Yeah, that's all, I don't know, that's quite difficult for that to be within our power.
Yeah. So we need the
mean,
number of archaeologists that live in town, for starters,
Yeah.
that limits our candidate pool.
I mean, we do have, so Sam Ford,
Mhm.
is somebody who grew up here and in the area, and she does historical research and yeah, we have people, I guess. They exist. But when the select board looks at staffing the WCC, they're not looking for this skill set, and I guess that's why this was in here, was to consider whether they should be
Yeah.
looking to increase that skill area on the WCC.
Yeah, I mean, that skill set could be useful, as we're reviewing development, proposal pre-apps and discretionary permits, for example. But are there other committees or other folks in town
I
that?
think we'd have to look at our regulations would be the first step. But I guess we just don't wanna so we'd have to develop a set of regulations for looking at archaeological
Yeah, I
findings,
see.
otherwise the archaeologists.
The findings don't have any bearing. Yeah.
Working because they're,
There aren't any bylaws connected.
well, my stock answer will be you can't ask for But it would be very frustrating for them.
Yep.
So it'd be like, I think their first job would be to work and develop some regulations.
Yep. Okay. Interesting. So,
I mean, obviously, a lot of this stuff gets done if you go to Act 250, but then there is the sort of sub Act 250
right,
development proposals.
which most of
Yeah.
ours are. So maybe that needs to be one of the elements of this part of the plan then is something like developing bylaws connected with archaeological review of development
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of got it in there already. I guess you guys only meet for like 48 hours a year, and it never rose to the level of priority as some other things do. So we'd have to think about where it falls on the priority list. Maybe refine these policies a little more.
Okay.
Okay, that's interesting. There's still a lot of support for that.
Yeah. And again, I think, so does that, like 13.4.1, it does, again, where does that, so that if that's in there, where does that fall in the responsibilities of the town committees? Is it Conservation Commission responsibility, or is it the history and
Well, I think,
architecture?
I don't know is the answer. I don't think it's been determined. For archaeology.
Says
Right,
should be evaluated, doesn't mean are being evaluated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this implies that it's within the Conservation Commission remit.
So I think 13.4 just needs to be discussed with the historical committee to figure out whether it should be in the next town plan. Are we actually going to work on it? Because we clearly didn't work on it the last 8 years.
nope,
I
or
just
the
said,
before that.
I just sent a best practices guide for historic and archaeological resources on forest land to you, but
Okay,
for what it's worth. From Jess Robinson.
oh, Jess, okay. Great. You can bring him in, chat with him about this too.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess, on 13.4. Unless there's something that, unless anyone has any suggestions there, then. It seems to me the Conservation Commission's perspective would be to leave that as it is and confirm whose role it is to, lift that one up. Is it the Conservation Commission's role, or a historic and architectural preservation role, or somebody else?
Yeah.
Because clearly, if the Conservation Commission's role, then it flew way past our radar.
Right.
All right, is that the end of that chapter?
That is, yeah.
And that is the end of our, is that the end of our, all of our chapters that we're reviewing?
Yeah.
So is there anything more that we should anticipate working on?
I think we need to let the task force get going and then bring you guys in once we start fleshing it out. I need to just go back through all this. I think off the top of my head, I've got some common themes. The conservation of land, the top priority, and getting the ERF into good order, shall we say, and maybe enshrining that 30 by 50. And then there's a lot about sort of weaving small scale conservation into other areas of the town plan. And then lastly, much more outreach to educate people about what the Conservation Commission's interests are.
So when, is what did you call it, task force?
Yeah, they talked about it at Planning Commission last night, but I wasn't there, so I need to catch up on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. So that brings us to, where are we? Two updates, other business. ERF and the select board budget. So the select board has met twice since I was there. For those of you who were not here last time, when I went to speak to the select board, they agreed to, or they asked Eric Wells to find a way to add $40,000 into the ERF budget. A reminder that it was in at zero, or wasn't in at all, I guess. We had asked for 150,000, and so they're looking for 100, they're trying to get 40,000 in there. Anything, have you heard anything about it since then?
I saw it went to select board last night with, there seemed to be select board consensus on including $40,000. There just seemed to be some discussion about the way they went about doing it, and the use of I think they call it the unassigned fund balance, which I think is like the extra revenue they get throughout the year, which builds up in a big pot. And then you'd spend it down. So I think they were talking about using that to pay for the extra, well, the plus 30,000.
Yep.
I guess the other thing was, I'm assuming everyone saw Reed's article made it into the Observer.
Yes.
Your comment, Simon, was page 15 could be better than page 15, but a photo
Well, I
got in
thought-
and the write-up was decent.
Yeah, I thought it was. It sort of hit all the points that you asked him to make in quite a succinct manner. Talking about the RF and the value of it, and the grappling with the budget process. I thought it was a great start. Just like you say, need to move it up the page order.
Did you actually, I forget, did you talk with the reporter or?
No, I
this
just
all from
I
what
just
you sent?
submitted photos and comments about the photos so that he could pick what to include. I thought he was going to go more visual with multiple photos, but in the end, Simon's face was the draw, and that's all we got for a photo. But that's a good photo because it got a lot of the audience in it, and some of the key points that I provided made it in there around like how much money has been used from the fund, how much of land in town has been conserved with it, that it's typically used to match funds, and that what the current budget is developing like, with 150,000 as the ask and 40,000 as the current football being tossed around. So, and it did mention that we're encouraging community members to come to the select board during their hearings if they want to advocate for more funding.
Yeah.
So I think that covered it pretty well.
Okay. Anything else?
For the next meeting, I'll email Nick. I'm not quite sure what happened with the clash, but I'll email Nick and see if we can get him in for February the 7th.
Okay.
Deb Muccio from Sustainable Williston also wanted to talk about Green Up Day. So we'll talk about that, and also Jim Helps, who's the guy who did the beaver drone footage for Wild About Williston. He's a filmmaker. He's been reading a book about beavers, and so he's interested in doing a film about them. I was just saying we give him 15 to 20 minutes just to chat about potential ideas for that, if that's okay with everyone.
Sure.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also
637 Christmas Lane.
No, that's Terry's land. But I need to email. I'm not sure whether I'm going to catch up with Terry.
Okay.
Prior to that.
Okay. Sorry, Reed, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just gonna say also when Jim comes, I know he didn't take the drone footage, he did the editing, right?
Yeah.
He took the ground footage, but his buddy there has the drone. It's another opportunity to say, in addition to just, the focus on beavers, that many people don't get to see the Allen Brook ecosystem up close, except from the crossing points. And it's a priority for me to do a better job documenting that. So if as part of documenting the beavers, we can also document how they interact in the larger riparian zone there. I think that would be interesting work and potentially great content for people to be able to access from the town website.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. The more people we get engaged in that and understand, the role of the beavers in the river would be good.
It'd be great to get
Okay.
some predators too.
That might be a harder sell, but yes.
You know what? I have a friend who texted me Sunday morning and said, "Do you know who the game warden in Richmond is?" And sent a picture of like a very bloody deer in their front yard. And the game warden came out and it had been taken down by coyotes. And like its
Yeah.
whole back end was coyoted. So let's not count out predators.
Yeah, go coyotes. I don't even really I don't even really know what eats beavers. I mean, they're probably too heavy for an eagle to carry. Bears, maybe.
I think
I
it's
don't
hat
know.
makers.
Hat makers? Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but like historically, pre-human predation, what ate something must have been eating the beavers. Was it probably not wolves? I don't know. Anyway,
Well, I know they're not an apex predator, so that must be, you're right. Must be
something must
else.
eat them. We don't have anything eating them today that I can see.
All right, so what, anything else for today?
No.
Okay. All right, so our next meeting is February 7th. Okay, since we got most of us on the call, okay, quick show of hands, will everybody be able to attend on the 7th?
I'll be there.
Great, okay. Ken?
Yes.
Kim, all right. We just heard you say on record that you're not teaching and you don't have any graduate students this semester, Kim, so I don't want to hear any excuses.
Yeah.
Basically has nothing to do.
She's
Right.
going to the hat to talk about rock walls.
I just want to say for the record that it's because I have to reapply for tenure at UVM, and so I do have to bust, but I don't have like things that are hard and stone.
Okay. All right. Then we'll let you all go. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Have a great
Thank you,
day.
Eric.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.